Hello, hello, how's it going? From New Zealand, another live stream. We're going to be covering another Dungeon Master, Lazy Dungeon Master video. That's sort of the kind of the topic for today. And I know that the title and the message might not be completely clear. I think you're going to get some surprises from what I have to say. Anyway, I'm waiting for the ad to finish because apparently I have to watch the ad as well as you. And now I can skip it. Thank God I turned on skippable ads. You will find the start time for this video down in the description. It is a live stream, so if you want to rewatch it later on, you need to be subscribed, hit the bell button to be notified, and also you need to have notifications turned on. So subscribed, bell button, and notifications turned on. Otherwise, patrons always get access to the live streams later on. That's not a problem. I do an edited version of all of my live streams for those of you who aren't really interested in all the Q&A, because the edited version does not include the community's questions and answers and feedback. Now, if you haven't been part of my live streams before, normally what I do is I present everything first using slides and images and so forth. It just makes it easier for me to do that, to read from my notes. And then at the end of the live stream, I will open it up and you'll see my face and then we'll have a chat. How's it going? Prepared to cook and survive. All right, sound seems to be fine. You'll let me know if there are any issues, and we'll get into this, and let's have a chat about recapping in your Dungeons & Dragons game. Practical Zaku. Is it Zaku? If I've got it wrong, I do apologise. Right, let's grab a drink, some food, settle down, grab yourself whatever you need to sort of make things comfortable for yourself. I'm sweating because it's very, very hot today, so I'm going to try to be very quick through this. So make sure if you have questions that you put those in at the beginning of the live stream so that as I'm going through at the end of the live stream, I don't miss you. That would be my advice to you. Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. Of course, I always talk about Dungeons & Dragons, but the topic for today is Dungeon Masters not recapping their Dungeons & Dragons sessions is lazy. Okay, so I need to sort of highlight this and be clear about what I'm talking about. So there's a couple of things I want to sort of highlight, some questions I want to answer, and then I want to surprise you, hopefully, with what I actually have in mind in terms of a topic. It's not quite the topic you might expect. So what is a Dungeons & Dragons session recap? Well, a Dungeons & Dragons session recap usually occurs at the beginning of your session, and its purpose, like with any group, is essentially a short summary of all of the important events or details from the group's last Dungeons & Dragons game session. Its purpose is very, very simple. It's usually there as a reminder. So what I want to talk about very quickly, though, is that when we talk about reminder, there's kind of a couple of other things going on here. So why does the Dungeon Master have to recap their last Dungeons & Dragons session at the beginning of a new game session? Well, the answer is, it would seem like the only reason would be is to remind everybody, but there's more to this question than meets the eye. So the players are reminded of what occurred in the adventure so far, yes, but the issue usually is not around just reminding people. And this is because most gaming groups can spend anywhere from a week to a month before they play again. So a gaming group might forget what has happened, yes, because they were playing like every month. But I think the interesting point is, why are we insisting that a Dungeon Master do the recap? Why is it that a Dungeon Master does the recap? I don't think that makes sense to me. So personally, I don't think the Dungeon Master needs to do the recap, but players could instead, for a number of reasons, do the recap themselves. And I think this is probably the most useful to you. It's going to certainly save you a lot of time, but the benefits are numerous. And I have 9 key points I want to go over that I think you will find interesting. Okay, so the first one, the most obvious, and that is that it's less work for the Dungeon Master, so they can sort of sit back and relax and enjoy themselves, have a drink, have a snack, while the players recount what they remember, which of course is the whole point, right? Number 2 is it's the lazy option, which is always the point of these types of videos. I have a series on lazy dungeon mastering, and the whole point is to be lazy and do less work, so that's another point. Number 3 is it forces the players to remember or try to remember what happened in the last game session. Now, that doesn't mean they will recount everything accurately. It means they might only focus on a certain aspect of the last session. They will certainly make some errors along the way. They may, in fact, come up with a whole lot of additional information, and you'll be sitting there wondering, what the heck? How did they come to that conclusion? Where did they get this information? Were they sitting at the same game table as you? This can sometimes happen. I think one of the more interesting aspects is, and of course all dungeon masters are hoping that their players will do this, but you might finally get your players to take notes on the adventure if you insist that they do the recap. If they know that this is a regular process where the dungeon master doesn't do the recap and they will be required to remember what happened last time, they might actually get a notepad and a pen or a pencil and take down a few notes so they know what's going on. So you don't have to tell them everything, because of course they've got a memory like a fish and it all just falls straight through the void while everything else is passing through between those ears. Number 5 is a dungeon master can tell what players are remembering from session to session. So there can often be a pattern in terms of what a player will remember, and that will actually show up to a dungeon master if they insist that the players recount what took place. Often some players, if they're into combat, will only recount or talk about the combats and battles they had. If there are players who are more focused on something like the social interactions or exploration, those might be the things they recount. And you can actually use that to determine if a player has a particular game style. So it's actually really useful information. I've done a video on Dungeons and Dragons player styles already, so you're welcome to go and check that out. But this allows you to actually find out what that style is without directly sort of asking them some sort of survey question and trying to pick it out that way. It's going to indicate to the dungeon master the player's interests, as I said before, but sometimes players will recount what took place, but those aren't necessarily the things that interest them. What you will find when players do a recap themselves is they will usually spend slightly more time talking about the aspects of the game they like. So even though they might say, oh, we had a combat with some goblins, that's all they say, but then they go into quite a lot of detail around maybe the exploration of a dungeon or a castle. That's a bit different. That means their interest was in that area of the gameplay rather than something else. So another way of sort of dissecting what players are really interested in, which is why I use this technique consistently now. Dungeon masters can use it to check players' understanding of what is going on in the adventure beyond the obvious. So players, as they're playing through your adventure, will read between the lines. They'll try to make deductions, do some analysis, assessment of the situation, and sometimes they will reveal during their recap that they're doing for the dungeon master what they have sort of concluded from the adventure. And that is actually really interesting information and useful to a dungeon master, because what it does is it allows a dungeon master to take the next step, and that is you can check a player and see if they have errors in details, events, in the goal of the adventure, or any deductions that they have come up with. Now, you can correct those, but you don't have to. Sometimes it's actually more interesting to let players go down a track that actually takes them in a direction that doesn't make sense. Even though they have obviously come to the wrong conclusion, there is nowhere saying that you have to put the players back on track. If you are capable of allowing them to go off the rails a little bit, or take a diversion or a side quest, or allow them to make mistakes along the way, you don't have to correct mistakes that they have concluded. It might be that they have come up with an event in their mind and their idea of what took place in that event is actually incorrect. It might be because you didn't describe the situation correctly, or it might be that they're processing between what you were saying and between them chatting with somebody beside them or playing on their phone, sort of messed up what they actually remembered. Now, I've seen this happen many times before, so it's bound to be something that you'll come up at your table as well. I think probably the most important aspect of getting your players to do a recap for a Dungeon Master is to stop your Dungeon Master writing down short stories. This is where a Dungeon Master, before they have their game session, looks at their notes from the previous session and decides they're going to write down like a short story. It could be like paragraphs. And their intention is to sit down and read all of this content out to their players at the beginning of the game session, at the beginning of their Dungeons and Dragons game session, which honestly I do not think is a good idea. It's likely to get ignored. Once you get past the first paragraph, you're really entering the zone of I am switching off, and you may well dump far too much information on the players when you could have done it more succinctly. You could have been a little bit more conservative with your word count, and really it should be more about taking bullet points rather than trying to create some master work of fiction. You know, you're not writing a short story or a novel when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. So don't fall into that trap. And I think by allowing your players to do the recap, that avoids that problem. There are, of course, Dungeon Masters who feel like this is a huge and important aspect to their game and that they must be doing this, and that anybody saying that they shouldn't is a bad thing. That's fine. You run your game the way you want. I am giving you advice to make your life easier, not harder. If players forget important details or events, this is where, and this is the only problem that you have with this system of running your game. If there is stuff that has been forgotten, it's up to the Dungeon Master to decide if they fill in the gaps on the past game session. You have that option. You can do that, or you can decide to not do that. It's there, and it's the only issue that I see with regard to getting players to do the recap. Now, I have a rather large series on being a lazy Dungeon Master, but this was spurned by a particular individual on the internet, Sly Flourish, who has a digital book, and you can also get it printed, I believe, called Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. It has really good advice. Michael Schell, I believe it is, and you probably heard of him before, okay? If you've watched these videos, you've probably heard of him before. Okay, so if you're interested in other videos regarding how to be a lazy Dungeon Master, I actually have quite a few videos. There's a big playlist now that you're welcome to go and check out if you want to. Otherwise, I have hundreds of videos for players and Dungeon Masters. You can go and find them pretty easily. They're all in playlists, easy to find, lots of different topics, pretty much every topic you can imagine. If you want to support the channel so I keep doing this sort of stuff, watch more of my videos. I have a Patreon page. It is down in the description. I have affiliate links to the book depository and Amazon if you buy stuff online, and I get a small commission off that. I have merchandise shelf under all of my videos if you want to buy some merchandise. Make sure to share, like, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. All right, going to be short and sweet today. I'm going to just check my glasses, see if my glasses are actually helping me today. My face should be coming up. All right, it's very, very hot in my office today, and there's nothing much I can do about that. So if I wind up cutting things short, it's because I'm about to pass out. I don't know if my glasses are actually doing very much. In fact, I don't think it's going to help me in the slightest, so I'm not going to bother. So leave them alone. Okay, let's have a look at the chat. It's pretty quiet today. That's all right. I didn't expect this to be a high volume video. I did feel like it was a video that I needed to make though. Prepared to Cook and Survive. I've already said hi to you. Practical Zaku, I believe. Hi, how's it going? Rivers RPG channel. How's it going? Yes, a DM needs to recap the last session. Yeah, no, I think the DM, you want a recap to occur, but I don't think the Dungeon Master needs to do that. That's just my opinion. I do not think that it's written in concrete. I don't really believe in writing things in concrete myself with regard to running the game. Dancers. How's it going, dancers? It's going all right. Getting through the week. I'm looking forward. I'm having a break very shortly, so I've got another week of work, and then I'm off for about 11 days. I'm really looking forward to that because I'm starting to feel the pressure a bit at work. What else here? A friend of mine has players roll the lowest roll needs to do the recap. I am adopting it. Fair enough. I don't really go with the random recap roll the dice thing, which I think it's a clever idea. Usually I find there's one or two players at the table who are willing to do a recap. If you've been playing with people long enough, there'll be somebody who wants to do it. Sometimes there's nobody. That's a problem. If there's nobody who wants to do the recap, you will find that you're only regurgitating what you know took place, and there's always the possibility of revealing information as a dungeon master that they should not know, that they would not have actually learned during the last session. And I've done that. I've seen other dungeon masters do the same thing. Summit, how's it going, Summit? Pearsham's here. What else got here? Leon Gunnett, it's been a while. In one of the groups I play, the DM gives inspiration to the player that does the recap. Now, I like that idea. That's a really good idea. There's, trying to find ways to give out inspiration outside of the ones that have been stipulated in the player's handbook or in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I mean, the Dungeon Master Guide has more options for why you might give out inspiration. The player's kind of sparse on that sort of stuff. But I think that's a really good idea, and it would be a good idea to give out inspiration to players who are willing to do the tracking of initiative, or if they are willing to pull out your miniatures or set up the battle map for you. Sometimes you can just give them the map and they can just draw it out because it's a small location. Those are all things that takes, a lot of the workload off the dungeon master. And that's the whole point, is to take the workload off the dungeon master so you have less to do. You have enough to do. You don't need to create more stuff for yourself. And if you can push some of it onto your players, that's a good thing. Pearsham reckons don't give them anything. I'm not going to go with that. I'm going to ignore that one. Don't let your players drink before they play. Are you talking about alcohol, Pearsham, or are you talking about just drinking anything, like water or something like that? It sounds a little strange. I don't actually have an issue with players drinking alcohol at the table. The only time I get concerned, because it's happened at the table before, is when somebody shows up with a six-pack and they decide to drink the entire lot very quickly. Then I know that they're on a rampage and there's all sorts of strife to occur. But if they show up and they have like one glass of wine or some mead or one beer, I actually find that helps sort of lubricate the game a bit. No good if you are playing with kids, but if you're adults, that's fine, right? If you're the right age. Okay, what do you got here prepared to cook and survive? I have a player whose job is just this. He is basically Felix Jagger. Okay, if anyone is aware of him from the Warhammer novels. No, I don't really know Felix. Sorry, not aware of him. Michael Abbott, how's it going? I revealed information in doing a recap by accident, so I like the idea of having no recap or having the players chronicle the adventure. Yeah, see, Michael is saying the very thing that can happen is you think you have presented everything in the game session from last time, and you actually know far more than that, and suddenly you reveal stuff that you weren't supposed to tell them by accident. But you can't do that quite so easily if the players do the recap and all you have to do is fill in the gaps. And I never try to fill in too many gaps when I do a recap myself as a dungeon master. I let the players do the recap and then I just look at the very basic stuff, because my view is, even though their characters would probably remember this sort of stuff, if the players can't be bothered taking the notes, I don't have to give them everything. I can give them the basics, but if they didn't pick out all the sort of intricate bits and pieces, I'm going to leave that out, and they can just wear that. That will, over time, mean that your group will find somebody who winds up taking notes. Glonix, yeah, thank you. I'm glad you like the hat. All right, so I think we've now, unless anybody, look, I will answer questions on anything for players or dungeon masters. Doesn't have to be this topic, but I'm pretty much tied up. I think we have covered the topic pretty easily. It's very simple. It doesn't matter whether you are a beginner, an intermediate, or an experienced dungeon master. Anybody can use this technique. There's no real skill required behind it. All it requires you to do is say, okay, can somebody tell me what happened last time during your game session? Can somebody do the recap? And you just sit there. That's all you got to do. Trust me, you can do that. All right, I'm getting dry now. So unless there are any more questions and any more feedback, I think that's where we'll call it quits. Now, I did have a discussion with somebody about what sort of videos I would do in the future. We're probably going to see a video on how to use a magnifying glass as a player guide for those of you who like that sort of content. And there was a discussion, and I didn't realize that I hadn't done anything in detail on it. Maybe I just forgot about it. I'm sure I had planned to, but I believe, I can't remember who actually mentioned it. One of the subscribers talked about doing a video on monster knowledge checks, a guide for dungeon masters. So how to determine sort of what skills you might use, or what sort of check you might use to make a knowledge check on the type of monster that the players are encountering when they say, what do I know about this monster? So what sort of skills and sort of what sort of DCs, what sort of difficulty class you might set for that, and what sort of information you might reveal as a dungeon master based on what they roll. So I think that's probably a very good idea as a video topic, because I don't see anybody talking about it whatsoever on YouTube. So that will probably be something I do in the future. Glonix, what do you got here? Any tips for starter DMs on how to ensure that the players enjoy interacting with the NPCs? Look, the best thing you can do with playing an NPC as a dungeon master is don't get caught up in trying to get fancy with using an unusual voice or trying to change your voice. That's too hard sometimes. All you have to do is understand the motivations of that NPC or non-player character and just talk as if you are them. Okay, literally just talk. You can use your own voice, you don't have to change it, but just pretend you are them for a short period of time and talk in like the first person rather than in the third person. That makes it a lot easier for players to sort of interact with you because they kind of know what's going on. If you talk in the third person, it makes it a little bit harder for them to integrate into a social interaction. But if you use the first person and pretend you are that character for a short period of time, that can certainly help a lot. That would be my advice to you. Start a dungeon master. Okay? All right. Okay, I think that's it. I think we've covered everything we need to, and I'm ready to sort of pass out. So I'm going to say, look, wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, the night, the very, very early morning, look after yourself, your family. Make sure that you don't give your neighbours too much of a hard time, even if they give you a hard time. I'm having a hard time with that one right now. Honestly, my neighbours have been a bit crazy recently. But look after yourself, family and your friends. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.